Welcome back to Deb's True Crime Notebook, December 20th. Today was Richard Allen's sentencing day, and there were several victim impact statements that were read at the actual sentencing hearing. I'd like to share those with you now. I think we have all of them except for one, which belongs to Josh Lank. And when we receive that one, we will bring it to you as well. So I'd like to read those impact statements from the families for you, and let's get into it. The first impact statement comes from Abby Williams' uncle, Eric Erskin. Victim statement. Writing and speaking about this tragedy is very difficult. I'm not very articulate or creative when it comes to the spoken and or written word. I'm a bolt and wrench kind of guy, but I will do my best to keep it brief. The effects of the loss of Abby these past 7 years on our family is beyond words. How this has impacted each of us and our daily lives is difficult to process or explain. Each family member was affected differently, but overwhelmingly the same. The loss of Abby was like losing a limb that will never grow back. This process has been similar to a wound that scabs over but constantly gets torn off and doesn't ever seem to heal. Thousands of times the possible scenarios of the girl's last hour on this earth has been replayed in my mind, and what was seen and heard in this trial only affirms some of my most horrific thoughts. I'm thankful for God's grace in our lives that has carried us through these dark days. The effects of this horrendous crime has not only had a huge impact on our families, but has impacted this town. Not sure if we will ever get back to normal as it was before the dreadful murders of our girls. The impact of the girls' classmates at the Delphi school was profound. Some are still in recovery from the trauma of this heinous crime. The horrific and senseless acts by Richard Allen on February 13, 2013 may have stolen our future and what might have been with Abby and Libby, but you, Richard Allen, will never take away our or their legacy of these girls. Something else that I will never be able to understand, Richard Allen, is how, after lying in wait and conducting your premeditated plan to have your way with our girls, how could you continue to go about your daily routine like it never happened? How could you do that? I would like to take a moment to set the record straight on a couple things that you have said, Richard Allen. Richard, you said you found God. Fact is, God has been here all the time. He is not lost, you were. God was here before the earth was created. You can read about it in Genesis 1. Matter of fact, God was there on February 13th. You chose to live a life void of God and full of sinful desires. Romans 1 speaks of the dangers of this lifestyle. Some refer to this as having a reprobate mind. The girls knew God. They accepted Him at Bible school and at church camp. I have no doubt they are in a better place. God gives each of us free choice. Deuteronomy 30 refers to this concept. In a moment of selfish desires, you made unconscionable decisions that are beyond my comprehension. Part of the Christian conversion process, which you admitted to, brings forth a change both in the physical and in the spiritual, and part of that growth process comes with accountability. Nearly 100 different scriptures that I am aware of speak of this. However, you chose to remain silent and when counted and set the record straight. The scriptures are very clear that in the end, everyone will be judged by the Creator for their deeds and actions. In closing, since the beginning of this journey, I have said that I trust the system. I have had faith in the body of work of law enforcement and the prosecution teams to do what's right on behalf of our girls, as well as this community to bring justice for all. Now, Judge Gull, we place that same trust in your decision, making authority to do what is right based on the laws of the state of Indiana. I believe your training and experiences has prepared you for this task. You wouldn't have been selected to oversee this trial if you were not qualified. Thank you, Judge Gull. Before I move on to the next victim statement, I'd just like to make a comment that reading through what Eric Erskin wrote was an experience. He may think he's not a writer, but God definitely had a hand in helping him prepare that statement. I felt the Holy Ghost moving as I was reading it, and I had chills from my head to my toes. It was an exceptional victim statement. As Libby's mom, I'm left with so many what ifs. I'm left without memories of her growing up, getting her driver's license and first car, her first job. She didn't get to graduate and go to college. We were cheated out of seeing her be the best auntie. She doesn't get to fall in love, get married, and have babies. She was robbed of the opportunity to experience life and fulfill all of the dreams and aspirations she already had at such a young age. I can't even put into words what it feels like to see other parents and their children get those things. For their lives to go on makes no sense to me. I shouldn't be jealous of them, but I am. I can't understand how life managed to go on for everyone else while mine stopped. Instead of those memories and milestones, I'm left with this massive grief, a literal hole in my soul. Broken relationships, shattered hearts, and broken dreams. I struggle daily with guilt, crippling anxiety, complex PTSD, and severe depression. But I have continued to persevere in a world that I don't want to live in without her. My daughters were robbed of their big sister, their childhood, their innocence, and life as they knew it. They had to grow up through so much turmoil. Alexis turned 11 just 3 days after her sister's body was found on my grandmother's birthday. Birthdays are hard around here. I'll never understand how he was able to get away with it for so long. How can such evil hide in plain sight? Continuing to walk down streets lined with this picture, making a mockery of law enforcement, the families, the community, and especially Libby and Abby for nearly 6 years. Only Richard Allen has those answers. He has claimed remorse and a need to apologize. I won't hold my breath waiting, but I do deserve those answers. Libby and Abby deserve the whole truth to come out, and I am all ears. While there will never really be justice or closure, and nothing will bring my daughter back, I'm so very proud of her for not only exposing her and Abby's killer, but also bringing much-needed attention to so many cases near and far. This tragedy hasn't completely stopped Libby from accomplishing at least one dream from beyond the grave. Her courage and strength will live on as she guides us through this lifetime. Until we meet again, she is my sunshine. Now we hear the victim impact statement from Diane Erskin, Abby's grandmother. I find it impossible to share how this crime has impacted my life without talking about Abigail, my first child's first and only child. She brought so much joy to our family and held so much promise in her short life. She was especially kind to young children and elderly people and was often surrounded by both in our home. Her favorite phrase was, "Do you need any help?" "Yes, Abby, I sure could use your help right now." The first words that came to mind whenever I think of February 13th, 2017 is terrified. Abigail was not bold or brave, especially when it came to strangers or the dark. This is the word that wakes me up in the middle of the night, knowing now what she faced, what she felt, what she suffered, and what she saw in the final moments of her life. The next word that enters my mind, especially since the trial, humiliated. Abby was a shy girl who blushed easily, and she never dressed in a way that was revealing or drew attention to her figure. She would have been devastated by the number of people who have seen her in this very most vulnerable state. I cringe every time I think about the photos that were not only shown for the purpose of the trial, but have been shared as some sort of sick propaganda. Every detail of her final moments reveals a nightmare, one that will relive involuntarily for the rest of our lives. Mutilated, Our sweet Abigail suffered first at the hands of a murderer and then to the process of an autopsy. I understand the medical and legal necessity for an autopsy, but until this trial, I was naive to how invasive this procedure was. How will I ever erase the mental images I now live with? I could have left during this or any portion of the trial that was so graphically horrific, but Abby didn't get that choice. Her last words that I heard recorded on Libby's phone were, "Don't leave me up here." Libby didn't leave, so I didn't leave. The last time I saw Abigail, she and Libby were laughing and walking out the back door, her arms full of craft supplies they planned to use. I was washing dishes and called, "Have fun." To this day, I have so much sadness for not stopping to hug her. The anxiety I feel every time one of my grandchildren leaves or I leave them is a lasting reminder of losing Abigail. Every day since the day Abby was murdered starts the same. I wake up, make the bed, and look at the clock to calculate how many hours I have until I may return to it. I pray, breathe, and make the most of the time that I have, knowing that I have now lived almost 5 times Abby's lifetime on earth. Every night I climb back into bed, look at the clock, and calculate how many hours I have left to sleep. Unfortunately, sleep is not an escape, but more often a task. I pray for a good dream, a visit from my loved ones who are waiting for me with Abigail in heaven. Nightmares come anyway, and I seldom sleep through the night without waking at least once. Then begin the what-ifs, or if only. As I watch Abby's friends grow up, graduate from college, choose careers, and even begin having children, I can't help but wonder who she would have become if her life hadn't been taken. How many great-grandchildren were murdered the day as well? How do we keep living and loving without her? I will never be the same person I was before Abigail's murder. I grieve the life I used to have. I feel sometimes that my own family has been cheated out of the version of me that existed before this crime and the me that many people will never know. I'm grateful for my life. I owe my survival to faith in God. Richard Allen took Abby's life on earth, but she had already given her heart to God. Believe that. The following is the victim impact statement of Mike Patty, grandfather of Liberty German. Honorable Judge Fran Gull, we appreciate your firm, fair guidance and direction, your ability to thwart off all the unnecessary noise and acts that were deployed during this process. Thank you for standing firm and staying focused on what needed to be done. I request you provide the maximum sentence allowed by our justice system, and whatever that sentence is would also have no possibility of parole. There is no parole available to our girls. For this, I will never forget. Now, he didn't read the impact statement to the jury because they weren't present, but I'm going to go ahead and read that. To the jury, we appreciate your time spent here and being away from your families. You've had to see and hear things in our society should not be so. But unfortunately, due to the acts of the convicted, this is what needed to be done. Being able to absorb and look at things objectively through an unfiltered lens and delivering the verdict, thank you. For this, I will not forget. To the prosecution, we appreciate your willingness to stay on task, putting in numerous hours, putting this case above many of your personal needs. The result speaks for itself, but wanted to share our deepest gratitude. For this, I will never forget. The investigation team, we appreciate your determination and grit to stay on this for so many years. I have observed from the outside while you investigated so many tips that many have no idea about. All to deliver proof and to get to the bottom of this case. Never once did I hear we're out of options. There was always a full court press to bring justice in this case. For this, I will never forget. Family, I'm so blessed to have such a loving family and welcoming family. Only wish I could have prevented any of this from happening and wish I could have protected everyone from having to go through this. Our family is strong and we will march forward and continue to grow. And for this, I'm grateful. To the defense, I understand the role you need to play, but I cannot connect the ways of our legal system to allow so many things to interfere with the truth and facts to simply be brought before a jury. I cannot imagine our forefathers ever envisioned the attempts to suppress and divert the facts would ever be part of our justice system. One should reflect and review their position to support truth, justice, and the American way. Your inept ability to protect some of the most personal facts in this case, the crime scene photos, and making statements that you really didn't care they were out there, my family will forever have to explain how these are available for people to search. What do I say to my kids, grandchildren, great-grandchildren? What will you tell your grandkids? I hope you tell them the truth. I surely will. For this I will never forget. For the convict, I will never understand how you could have conducted such an atrocity. You killed my granddaughter nearly 8 years ago and have only thought of yourself. Your attempts of self-preservation are a result of how you really are. Once you committed this crime, you could have been a man, stood up and taken accountability, but you didn't. At any time during these proceedings, you could have stood up and taken responsibility, but you didn't and were only concerned about yourself and tried to get away with murder. Actions always speak louder than words. By being so selfish, you continue to punish and hurt my family. For this, I will never forget. Your act of murder has tested my faith. I am still not ready to provide forgiveness. When I am able to do it, it will be of my own faith and conscience, not yours. For this, I will never forget. I have never felt such hatred and should not be this way towards another human being. What you have done has impacted so many people's lives. We will heal with the help of our pastor. I'm lucky to have a great family and will enjoy the rest of my life helping and watching all of them grow from our kids to our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. This is something you will never get to take away, and you will never get to experience such joy and love as what my family has. Lastly, hope the rest of your days are spent in as much fear as the girls had to experience the last part of their lives, and hope those moments haunt you for the rest of your days. You deserve no better. Now is the time to stand up and take accountability. Put a stop to any future attempts to appeal so we can let Libby rest in peace. Mike Patty, grandfather of Liberty German. And now the victim impact statement from Becky Patty, Liberty German's grandmother. To Honorable Judge Gull, where does one start? How does one explain the effect of how one choice a person makes has on an entire family for generations to come? I don't think one can really explain and do it justice. There are not enough words in our language that begin to paint the picture of the grief we live with each and every day. Richard Allen was an adult, and he should be held accountable for the choices he made on February 13, 2017. He chose not to go to lunch with his mom and sister, instead chose to drink beer for liquid courage. He chose to lay in wait for his victims, to order them down the hill. He had the opportunity to let Libby and Abby go when that white van drove by, but he chose not to do so. Instead, he chose to take them across the creek where he viciously murdered them, making sure they were dead before he went home and continued his life. Richard Allen viciously and heartlessly stole the choice to live from Abby and Libby that day. He was a coward and didn't want to be held accountable for his heinous choices and actions, so he just killed them and went home. I guess in his eyes he was nice enough to make sure they were dead before leaving so they wouldn't suffer. A few days later, he developed photos for the family that would be used at Libby's funeral. He stood there watching the family members as they struggled to keep their composure while dealing with the insurmountable grief and preparing for the unthinkable that lay ahead, not blinking an eye, with no remorse. I wonder what he was thinking. Our lives turned upside down that day, never to be the same again. Abby and Libby, two young teens with their entire future ahead of them, they never got the opportunity to make their marks in this world. He stole that from them. Libby never got to go to the prom, graduate, go on dates, go to college, get married, or start a family. She never got to be the best aunt ever. He robbed all of us. The world was robbed of what could have been. All the while he went on living his life. He was able to walk his daughter down the aisle and give her away at her wedding. I wonder, did he think of our girls at all while walking her down the aisle? Our families will never get that privilege of watching Libby or Abby walk down that aisle. He took that away from us. The impact of Richard Allen's choices made that day has haunted our families for almost 8 years and continues to even now. Because of choices he made and his subsequent arrest, he was appointed 2 lawyers to defend him. Those lawyers have done nothing but twist the knife around and around in our wounds Richard caused that day. Because of one lawyer's sloppiness, sealed crime scene photos of Libby's naked and mutilated body were left unattended, allowing images to be taken and spread around to people on the internet. As recent as this week, those crime scene photos were still being shared on the internet for no good reason or entertainment by many. Sharing those photos changes nothing. It doesn't solve the crime. It doesn't bring the girls back. So now, because of Richard Allen's choices that day and his lawyer's sloppiness, the impact has now become generational for us. One day when Libby's nieces or nephews decided they want to learn more about their Aunt Libby, they may be faced with those horrible crime scene photos that were so carelessly taken care of. I wonder if his lawyer would have been so careless with those photos if those photos were of one of his children. Would he still have felt no accountability because he was snookered? And then you have the other lawyer who sat in the judge's chambers and stating he really didn't care that those photos had been leaked? I wonder if he would have been so callous and uncaring if those were photos of his child's naked and mutilated body being shared. Would he still not care? No, these professionals are allowed to claim no accountability for their actions and move on to the next case, disrespecting and devaluing the next victim and their families. Meanwhile, our families are left picking up the pieces because of their choices and actions. In the end, all of these choices made by the defense team, the fallout our families now have to live with falls directly on the head of Richard Allen because of the choices he made on February 13th, 2017. I could go on and on about what we've lost that day, but it wouldn't change anything. The deafening silence in the house, the milestones missed, the grandbabies never to sit on our laps, the impact Libby and Abby would have had on so many lives. Talking about it won't bring them back to us. Nothing in this world can change the outcome of that horrific day. No matter how hard we wish or pray them back, they're gone forever. Only Richard Allen making a different choice that day could have changed it. Their lives were in the balance. He chose to kill Abby and Libby. Their lives mattered. He is the one responsible for all of this. All I can hope for now is that Richard Allen will be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law for what he did that day. His sentence needs to reflect not only of murdering the girls, but also serving time for each day of life those girls still had in front of them. For every feat they may have accomplished, I feel he should serve 1 day behind bars for each future day he robbed from those girls. I hope he is not held in a single occupancy cell, since his attorneys feel it would be detrimental to his health. I hope he is ordered to reside in general population so he can have the human interaction he so craves and needs. Last of all, I hope he lives each day of the rest of his life living with the same fear he bestowed on Abby and Libby the last hour of their lives. I hope the choices he made on February 13th, 2017 come back to haunt him, giving him no peace. I realize I should not feel this way, but I can't stop these feelings. I hope God can see my heart and can forgive me. I hope Richard Allen's new relationship with God will finally compel him to do the right thing and to stop this nightmare from continuing any longer. Not only for our families, but his as well. He needs to do what he knows God would want him to do. I hope he finally gives the girls the respect they deserve, give them back the dignity he so callously took from them. Richard Allen took so much from our families and the world that day, but what he will never take from us is our memories we have of Libby and Abby. We will forever keep them alive, even if it only can be in our hearts. I live every day with the burden of the choice I made that fateful day. I can never change the results of my choice of letting the girls go to the trails, and I take responsibility for that. What about you, Richard Allen? Will you ever own up and take responsibility for the choices you made that day? Only you can stop this nightmare for all the families. You can make that choice. Side note, there was an added handwritten portion of this. I'm not sure where it fit in, but I think it's important for me to read it. It was part of Becky's statement. When does it ever stop? As recent as yesterday, the defense continued playing their games. They know law enforcement investigated their third-party theories with never being able to place any of those people at the trails that day. They continue their charades at the expense of Abby and Libby. We don't even want to go there talking about the hardships caused to the family. Richard Allen is not the victim. Those are the impact statements from the victims' families that were read in court today, December 20th, in the Richard Allen trial. Please, if you leave a comment, be respectful and compassionate. We'll see you next time on Deb's True Crime Notebook.